Yeah, I'm losing my
We
edge.
are going to give the next 16 minutes to stepping on Tech Week and just start talking about technology already here. You had a great idea for the show today, Michael. You were just like, with the new Sticks product, why would people be interested in trading technology stocks or a sector at all? And I thought, well, good idea. We have a segment to fill every day with content, so we'll write about it, and you and I'll rap about it a little bit. But let's start here. Michael, it's not just happenstance that we made a technology stock index here, and that everybody is talking about technology stocks in 2020. It's not coincidence, right? It's at the front of traders' minds because of a graphic like this.
Yeah, this this almost says it all. I could think we might even change this title to "Why Not Trade Technology
Sure.
Stocks." And I talk to all my buddies, on a weekly basis. They send me, what are you thinking about in the market? Have you seen this stock? And most of them, I would say, are technology stocks. And Frank, both you and I's experience on the research team as well, we saw kind of a transition
Sure.
between sectors at certain points in time. There's a lot of interest in energy products a few years back when I was finishing up college. Because oil was 110 or $120 a barrel, people were talking about the energy sector. And now that has really transitioned to tech stocks. And I think COVID has even exacerbated it further.
Sure. Yeah. And I'm very surprised that your friends don't want to trade JP Morgan or Exxon. That's really surprising. No, it's not surprising, Michael, because you're totally right. When I showed up out of college here in 2015 on the doorstep of the Chicago Board of Trade and then eventually Tasty Trade a year or so later, you see all these sectors kind of doing a dance, right? They're all trading hands back and forth. For a while there, industrials outperforming all the other sectors, and even energy here in blue. I mean, it was the second best performing here for the first half of the last decade. And now you've just seen, like you said, that all of this movement here in the second half of the decade exacerbated by a bunch of different things. And it's not to say that, like, oh, in 2020, Michael and I are millennials and we hate Exxon and we have all these opinions. No, it's just people want to trade what's moving, and tech stocks are the ones that are moving. No one wants to trade an Exxon or an Apache or any of these energy companies or finance companies that are just are struggling to hit unchanged. It's just not as interesting to trade these stocks. That you look at this blue line here, energy, since 2016 or 2015, wherever you want to go back, and it's just this slow grind lower. These small bounces with just nothing met with. Even most recently here, you see this bounce off of the March lows and then another grind lower. And that's why people want to talk about tech stocks. They've taken over the market capitalization, which I'm front running now the next slide here, if I can move on. They've taken over the market capitalization here, Michael, because of that move. And because of that, they're at the forefront of everyone's minds. They're at the forefront of these indices like the S&P 500, which has turned over a lot of its top five since 2010 to 2020 here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a great slide, and it just exemplifies a point that I want to touch on quickly. Back in 2010, I think I was familiar with Microsoft, and I definitely had seen my first iPhone. I don't think in 2010 I knew of Amazon. And one of our colleagues talks
Sure.
about knowing Amazon in the 90s when his father was buying books through them directly. I think I knew Google. Facebook was very new. But you talk about what people are using nowadays and what's most relevant in their lives. I mean, I have an iPhone here and I interact using Microsoft products on a pretty much daily basis. I'm not a Amazon Prime member, though I do order through them. All my Gmail is Google, and I don't have a Facebook account, but they have 2.5 billion users.
Yeah.
So when we speak about relevancy, these are the stocks that have kind of come into the spotlight. And kind of touching on something from the previous slide too, maybe the trend in energy was people wanting to trade oil and using Exxon as a proxy, for example.
Sure.
Whereas the futures may have been a more direct way to trade oil. But tech stocks are the way to trade technology or
Yeah,
index products.
absolutely. You see the turnover here, and it goes hand in hand with this because the S&P 500 is market capitalization
Yep.
weighted, which will come up a little bit later as we start to talk about our technology product. And yeah, it is interesting. You talk about the fact that Amazon back in the outs was they books, and you got Netflix, which is a top 10 name. They were just sending DVDs around,
Mhm.
and they pivoted, right? They made themselves into this huge company by changing what they're doing. And I would say right now is an inflection point for these energy companies to kind of do the same thing. You know,
Mhm.
see the writing on the wall, and instead of trying to drill for every drop of oil here, maybe turn a little bit and regain some of the steam. Because Michael, we're going to be, well, hopefully, actually, no, it'd be a pretty sweet gig if you and I were doing the same show 10 years from now. But some young, more attractive person than me will be doing the show in 2030. And it's not going to be these same five names. So that's the one thing that I can guarantee is I don't know which names it'll be, but some companies will change what they're doing right now or escalate that, take it farther. Amazon going from not just books to everything in the world. People are ordering from Amazon and take over the market capitalization, take over the relevance. But until then, you've got technology that is vastly more intriguing than the stock market as a whole. And investors can use, so why trade a sector specifically? They can get this more specific stock exposure with the sectors than the broad market, because what you are seeing here is the S&P 500. Why isn't it up 400% like these tech stocks that are in the top five holdings here? And that's because it's being dragged by its energy sector. You talk about the small stock 75 recently. You know, why isn't it taking off with the NASDAQ? And it's because it's a more diversified index that has energy stocks and has industrials and these other materials that aren't outperforming right now. And that's great for stuff like investing. And when those energy stocks and everything turns again, that index will start churning, moving around all over the place. And it's going to be a great trade. But since technology is at the forefront, Michael, we want all eyes on technology. And as an exchange, we can put all eyes on technology.
Yeah, spot on. And I think the diversification piece is definitely important, and having a small stock 75 representative of five sectors is fantastic for holistic equity market exposure. But sometimes it is nice to kind of zero in on a subset
Yeah.
within the economy. And I think people are naturally bullish on certain sectors. If energy can turn around and switch to renewables, I think a lot of people would be interested in a product that represents that. And right now, technology is certainly of interest, but there's a fine line, right? And I
Yes.
think the sector is a nice representation because, as you've demonstrated here, you could have invested in just one single name like Apple and returned, what is that, 1,400% since 2010. But you also could have picked a tech stock that no longer exists and went bankrupt.
Sure.
So kind of finding a middle ground between it with a technology sector product is a nice compromise.
Well, it's this idea of, like you said, everybody, whether it's investing or trading, speculating, this degree of specificity here, I think intrigues people a lot. And it gives you something to grab onto. When you have 500 stocks and they're all over the place, it can be a little hard to have an opinion sometimes. And getting that degree of specificity is intriguing. But when you go too far, your opinion can really do some damage, you know, whether it's long or short Apple here or long or short Coca-Cola, um, you're getting very different results. And so what we did, Michael, you're not going to believe this, is we combined those two ideas and we said, well, let's give people the specificity of technology, but let's not do the whole thing where it's just like, all right, here are three or four of the tech names. Let's give them the diversification within the tech sector. Now, you bet your sweet behind that this is going to move like this technology trend of the last decade. We've run correlations on this relative to NASDAQ, relative to the S&P technology sector ETF, and it is near, I think it's zero point 0.9 or above for all of those relationships. But what we thought would be interesting is not just give you the Apple, Amazon, Google, and what's the one I'm not, Microsoft there, but give you all of those in their own little subsectors, and then give you another 56 names that are relevant that we think, will be relevant moving forward as well in the tech sector here. We made essentially took the tech sector, made it its own big stock market, and then created sectors in bio, retail, information, and media.
And I think this is such a cool view, and kudos to you and the whole products team for taking a look at it this way. You can always talk about sectors, and in my financial education classes in college, that's the way we saw it, but we almost never dove any deeper. But technology is so much more than just Apple and Amazon. I mean, you have this whole subsector here, if we can call it that, biotechnology.
Yeah,
which absolutely. Is amazingly cool space. And I'm from the East Coast, and Boston is really a hub of medical technology. And I think a lot of the biotech names within this subsector come from there. But it's not something you would traditionally think to look at unless you've really done your research. But I think a lot of people would appreciate exposure to something like biotechnology, whether it is gene modification or bioinformatics. I think there's a lot going on there that people should kind of peel back and dig into.
Yeah, bioinformatics. Wow, look at that. I didn't even know that one. But no, to me, it is a lot more interesting. And it's reminiscent of, we do so much research on indices here at the Small Exchange, because we like to really think that as a small, no pun intended, as a small futures exchange, we have the ability to really create indices and thus futures out of anything. And so we do so much research. And I always think about, with this product, on my mood board when we were constructing it, was the Dow Jones Industrial Average, which you might say, wow, why would that be on there? It's one of the oldest equity indices, dating back to prior to 1900. They started tracking it. And why it was on my mood board was because I was like, well, at the turn of the century there, industrial companies were the market. Right now, industrials are viewed as just a sector of the market. And so to me, I was like, man, okay, you have all these statistics. 25% of the S&P 500 stocks are for tech stocks. 50% of the NASDAQ 100 stocks are for tech stocks. And we keep coming back to this idea, and we're like, and I was finally just like, in 2020, in the same way in 1900, technology, not to hurt anybody's feelings, but for all intents and purposes, is the stock market to a lot of people. Your friends who aren't, no one is trading XOM right now because it's just not seeing the opportunity on both sides of the trade. And so I was like, let's just create this stock market that is technology, and not just another sector ETF or sector future or whatever that is just a couple of names. And it's interesting. You bring up the single names here in the biotech field, and you have some bigger names like AbbVie, but you have a lot of these small tech names as well, like Moderna and Regeneron, and a lot of these cool names that I think people are going to start to get comfortable with here as a quarter of this technology product. But also, Michael, here in media, Disney, we decided that Disney right now, as it and it goes back to that first conversation we had here today, as it pivots into, this online platform, and it's creating content the same way that a newer media company like Netflix is, that's a tech stock to us. So it's not a matter of we're just taking all the newest stocks that have cool technology. No, it's a mix and match of both, and it creates this really cool product.